Hey everyone, Matthew from Silicon Insights here. You might be able to tell I sound sick, and that's because I am, thanks to fall allergies. I'll just be doing a simple voiceover for this video, which covers the Arrow Lake news Intel dropped yesterday. I know this is yesterday's news, but since the channel is so new, Intel didn't know to send Silicon Insights the news before it went public. But thankfully, I did get in touch with Intel, and now that problem should be squared away for future stuff. Anyways, it seems after a brief relapse into refresh mania, Intel has finally gotten back to releasing new desktop CPUs. Arrow Lake, officially called the Core Ultra 200 series, is finally coming in just 2 weeks. So let's talk about Arrow Lake. This CPU is basically what Meteor Lake would have looked like if it ever made it to the desktop. In case you don't know, Meteor Lake, or the Core Ultra 100 series, came out in December and was the first chiplet or tile-based CPU Intel released, finally following AMD's lead. Both Arrow Lake and Meteor Lake are composed of 4 tiles, one for the CPU cores, one for the integrated GPU, one for I/O stuff, including PCIe lanes, and a final one called the SoC tile, or System on Chip tile, which is basically everything else on it, including Wi-Fi 7 support and the NPU. I couldn't find any in-depth details on the tiles and what precisely is in each one. I did reach out to Intel, but if this is still in the video, that means they didn't get back to me. I would assume that Arrow Lake is broadly similar to Meteor Lake, but I'm not entirely sure. For example, when Intel talks about Arrow Lake's integrated graphics, they mention the XE Media Engine, which is what decodes and encodes videos. This used to be on the SoC tile Meteor Lake, but maybe it's been moved to the GPU tile? That's what Intel's slide deck seems to suggest. It's also not clear to me if all of Arrow Lake's tiles are 100% new, or if Intel reused some from Meteor Lake, except for the CPU tile obviously. Although it would have been good bang for buck on Intel's part to reuse one or more of Meteor Lake's tiles, I believe Intel did change the SoC, I/O, and GPU tiles at least a little bit, but not much overall. Again, I asked Intel to clarify, but they didn't get back to me. The CPU tile is of course the star of the show, since it's the source of the new performance and efficiency gains. Arrow Lake marks the first time Intel has manufactured one of its desktop CPUs outside of its own fabs, as the CPU tile was made at TSMC on its 3nm class N3B process. This is the same node that Intel used for Lunar Lake's compute tile. And like Lunar Lake, Arrow Lake features Lion Cove P cores and Skymont E cores. Lion Cove is said to offer a decent 9% boost in instructions per clock, or IPC, compared to the Raptor Cove cores in Raptor Lake, and the Skymont cores boast a massive 32% IPC increase versus Gracemont. The Arrow Lake CPU tile comes with up to 8 P cores and 16 E cores, identical to Raptor Lake. However, Intel has removed hyperthreading from Lion Cove, meaning Arrow Lake's maximum thread count is 24, down from 32 on Raptor Lake. Intel decided to do this because the benefits of removing hyperthreading outweighed losing 8 threads, which only help in heavily threaded workloads anyways. This isn't even the first time Intel killed hyperthreading. It was initially supported on Pentium 4 chips, but succeeding Core and Core 2 CPUs dropped it since they used a completely different architecture. Intel also gave up a little bit of clock speed for Arrow Lake's Lion Cove cores, which max out at 5.7 GHz, while Raptor Cove cores in the 14th gen lineup go up to 6 GHz. The Skymont E cores do, however, go up to 4.6 GHz, a tad higher than the 4.4 GHz that Gracemont clocked in the Raptor Lake refresh. The last major change Intel made to Arrow Lake CPU cores was giving them 3 MB of L2 cache each, 50% higher than the 2 MB each P core got with Raptor Lake and Meteor Lake. While CPU cores aren't the main source of AI prowess for mobile chips like Lunar Lake, 15 of Arrow Lake's 36 total tops at N8 come from the CPU. That means Arrow Lake PCs just barely don't meet the requirement of 40 tops to be considered Copilot Plus material. But considering a discrete GPU can have hundreds of tops, I don't think it matters too much. Moving on to the GPU tile, it might not surprise you that it's pretty lean. Enthusiast desktop CPUs really don't need powerful integrated graphics, so Intel just put 4 XE cores, not the newer Battlemage XE2 cores, in Arrow Lake's GPU tile. Intel does advertise support for DX12 Ultimate and ray tracing, but it's incredibly unlikely anyone would be gaming on this iGPU. Like I said, the SoC tile has a ton of stuff on it, including the NPU or Neural Processing Unit. As far as I can tell, Arrow Lake's NPU is basically Meteor Lake's, but with a higher clock speed. This NPU gives Arrow Lake another 13 tops worth of performance. The memory controller and memory PHY are also on the SoC tile and officially support DDR5 6400 MHz memory. There is no support for DDR4 memory, unlike with Raptor Lake. Through both the SoC tile and the I/O tile, Arrow Lake has lots of modern connectivity options: Wi-Fi 6E and 7, Bluetooth 5.3 and 5.4, and up to 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. Arrow Lake also offers up to 20 PCIe 5.0 lanes and 4 PCIe 4.0 lanes, as well as 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. These PCIe 5.0 lanes means that Intel doesn't need to reduce the X10 slot for the GPU down to 8 lanes if someone installs a PCIe 5.0 SSD, which is currently the case on Alder Lake and Raptor Lake systems. You might be wondering why it took Intel so long to make Arrow Lake and get it on the desktop if it's so similar to Meteor Lake. Aside from improving the CPU cores, Intel mostly just added more stuff that was good to have on the desktop and removed stuff that wasn't necessary, like the fast iGPU. It's not a radically different chip. We don't know all the facts, but according to decently credible leaks, there was a desktop version of Meteor Lake and it was going to use the same LGA 1851 socket Arrow Lake uses, but it got canned at some point. Personally, I think Meteor Lake desktop chips got canceled because Raptor Lake was able to come out much sooner, could be made for much cheaper, it might even have been faster. That's just a theory though. Anyways, let's get to the 3 Arrow Lake models that Intel announced. We have the Core Ultra 9 285K, the Core Ultra 7 265K, and the Core Ultra 5 245K. These CPUs pretty much replaced the Core i9 14900K, Core i7 14700K, and Core i5 14600K, not just in respect to price points, but also core counts. They arrive on October 24th. We also have the iGPU list 265KF and 245KF, but strangely no 285KF. I have to wonder whether the F models in the 200 series come with disabled iGPUs or no iGPUs at all. The whole reason the F models were created in the first place was so that Intel could sell chips that had functioning CPU cores but a broken integrated GPU. But now Intel doesn't have to wait for defective CPUs or forcibly disable iGPUs if it wants to sell more F models. Intel offered internal benchmarks, but only for the 285K. These benchmarks indicate that compared to the 14900K, the 285K has about 15% higher multi-threaded performance. Heavily multi-threaded power consumption should be about the same as the 14900K since the 285K has the same 253 watt boost TDP as its predecessor, but apparently power usage in lightly threaded tasks is down by about half. Intel didn't say how much the 285K improved in games, so we can probably assume that it provides roughly the same performance as the 14900K or maybe a little more. However, gaming power consumption is down by 73 watts on average, which is nothing to sneeze at. Against AMD's latest Ryzen 9 9950X, Intel claims some pretty big wins. The 285K is apparently 13% faster in multi-threaded work overall, but can be even faster in specific workloads. Intel claims the chip is 20% faster in rendering, 50% faster in so-called creator AI, and 8 times as fast in timeline scrubbing. I don't really doubt those last two claims since the 285K has an NPU and a much more robust iGPU. Intel also teased Arrow Lake H and Arrow Lake HX and even included a pretty detailed picture of both chips. The HX chip seems to be identical to the desktop version, which is pretty normal. By contrast, Arrow Lake H seems to have 6 P cores and 8 E cores, the same core configuration we've seen for pretty much every mid-range hybrid CPU Intel has made since Alder Lake. Plus, the Arrow Lake H iGPU seems to have 8 Xe cores instead of 4. The GPU tile should be pretty similar to the 8-core variant used in Meteor Lake, and almost certainly doesn't have Battle Mage Xe 2 cores like Lunar Lake does. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me that Intel would pair its fastest integrated graphics with a CPU that's likely to feature laptops with discrete GPUs anyways. It's clear already that Arrow Lake won't be some kind of Zen 2 or Alder Lake moment and totally shift the balance in respect to performance. Intel seems to be playing catch up with Arrow Lake and is also offering a much more efficient product than it did with Raptor Lake. Is that the most interesting thing we've ever seen on the desktop? No. But if Arrow Lake lives up to Intel's own expectations, then I'd say it can justify its existence. And let's give Intel a little credit considering how rough things have been lately. Intel had to switch from its own foundry to TSMC, figure out how to deliver CPUs based on this new tile system, and go through financial troubles all at the same time. AMD does not have that kind of baggage. I'm hopeful that Arrow Lake will be good in its own right, and also be a solid foundation for future Intel CPUs. We'll have to wait and see though. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Intel's brand new CPUs. If you enjoyed my analysis, like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to Silicon Insights, and click the bell icon to get notified about new videos. If you want to financially support what we're doing, visit our Patreon. There's a link in the description. As always, thanks for watching.